as I stated, there are four, actually there are five key themes, but I just cut it down to four for the presentation. So there's four key themes of the article for, let's say, creating a decolonized futures practice. So one relates to methods, the other is project design, third is the role of the futurist, and fourth is exploring others' worldviews. So starting with methods, and I keep on saying this, but like I'm not an expert practitioner, so I'm really curious to hear about what the practitioner point of view would be. And for methods, just my research pointed to me that instead of prescribing specific methods, I found that methods in the futures practice has to be able to reflect or enable access to a plurality of different conceptual worlds. And this sort of goes back to Nandy and Sardar's like provocations about decolonization. And we have to think about how we can open up non-Western futures using the categories and concepts of the non-West rather than relying by default on Western frameworks. So there are some, so these are some things to consider. So instead of thinking about one particular method as the best way to decolonize, it's good to adopt an experimental, maybe multidisciplinary or non-disciplinary approach. And there's actually an article by Andrew Curry and Wendy Schultz showing that different methods leads to different futures. And we want to explore as many alternatives as we can instead of being limited to a narrower set of possible futures. And different combinations of methods could work in different contexts because, there's like individual preferences, audience experience with different methods, etc. But one thing that's really important to keep in mind is that when we are thinking about how to use methods, we should think about which methods will disrupt the business as usual status quo to produce alternatives. And if you think about it this way, we can also repurpose methods and use them flexibly. So the Delphi method is often used to, like create some sort of consensus around experts in a field. But instead, we could think about using the Delphi method for surveying local community members to develop a consensus instead of like experts from the West. And we can also think about how backcasting, which was described as like a very good decolonizing method because it helps think about actualizing preferable futures. We can think about how backcasting could be used by like fossil fuel companies to colonize the futures of humanity. And I thought this method, I didn't really talk too much about it in my article, but I thought like Pupul Bisht's decolonizing futures method is like a really nice example of something that accesses a very specific cultural world. Because she creates a decolonizing framework with participants in rural India involving storytelling and oral culture. So I have some like reservations about using this as a general approach for decolonization because it might not be culturally relevant for other groups, but as a ground up sort of method, it's pretty interesting to think about this. So for project design, I would say that key thing to think about under this theme is to think about what Sohail called the politics of planning, which are questions like who's involved, who participates, who makes the decisions, whose frameworks are involved. And secondly, to answer these questions, to aim for, while aiming for horizontal participation and dialogue, because there's no point, let's say, having a diverse group of people in a room if it's just one person talking. Because these decisions can change the project completely by privileging certain topics, issues, and all of these are about addressing power dynamics. Because on a more general level, addressing these power dynamics might reveal completely new topics of inquiry that are rarely addressed. So Ivana had a really great quote here from one of our articles. If future studies opted to work within feminine guiding principles, it would most likely prioritize the futures of education, parenting, community, relationships, and health, the real grand issues. So all of the predominant topics of future studies right now can be, might be like a relic of an uneven power dynamic